Welcome back, dear viewers. We continue this special live coverage of the 33rd Arab Summit, and we are pleased to be joined in here at the studio by the Director of Studies and Research at Derasat, Dr. Omar Al-Ubaydli. Thank you very much for being with us today,
Pleasure.
Doctor. Doctor, we've had a lot of discussions today from the beginning about the topics on the agenda and what's going to be discussed and the potential outcomes. The Arab nations, with their history, their values, their human resources, their creative talents, their cadres, their strategic location, all of these things are capable of making them further themselves and develop themselves in the future. What can you tell us about the capabilities of strengthening the joint action between our countries to fulfill that kind of development?
Yeah, so the Arab League, as I'm sure has been mentioned throughout your coverage, was established in 1945, before even the United Nations. It's a very old and an important institution. And it springs from the belief that among all Arab countries and all Arab peoples that there is very much a sense of an Arab identity. And this Arab identity, is something that was very much strengthened with the arrival of Islam in the 7th century. And the agenda since throughout the time of the existence of the Arab League has always been about how these people from different parts of the world who are connected linguistically, connected religiously, connected ethnically, can work together to realize their potential. And the Arab world is blessed with many resources. Some are natural, and some, as you mentioned, are the human resources. There's a lot of talent in the region. So really, one of the primary goals of these summits is to work out how to leverage all these resources and help Arabs live more comfortable and more prosperous lives.
Right. When we talk about the potential development of different countries, it also stems from the fact that each one of these countries, and on top of them being Bahrain, have expertise in different fields where they can basically help out when it comes to fulfilling the need in different Arab countries, depending on what the problem is. What can you tell us about that kind of cooperation, especially that Bahrain has already started a lot of MOUs and projects in developing other countries or helping in development of certain fields?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. First of all, as you mentioned, the Arab world is very heterogeneous. Yes, we are united by things like our language and our religion and various customs, but at the same time, as anyone who's been a tourist in Bahrain and been a tourist in Morocco and been a tourist in Egypt, these are very different places, each with their unique character, their unique culture, and they also have very different economic structures, very different intellectual environments. And so that whenever you have heterogeneity, when you have differences, what that does is that creates a great possibility for exchange, for mutual learning, and for cooperation. And in the case of Bahrain, this is something that's been part of our identity since antiquity. Bahrain has always been somewhere that's very strongly connected to the other countries in the region, especially the ones in the immediate neighborhood, but even ones further afield, like India and the Far East. And in the case of the Arab world, Bahrain has a proud history of collaborating with other countries in the region in a brotherly and constructive fashion, and that continues with this Arab League summit, and that spans economic cooperation, social cooperation, educational cooperation, many, everything you can think of, and you can always rely on Bahrain to be number one when it comes to setting the agenda and leading the way in building bridges.
Absolutely, and Bahrain's history is actually represented in a lot of the times when the Kingdom of Bahrain is a platform for different kind of discussions. We mentioned the Manama Dialogue as a platform for security studies as well as for security solutions. We also mentioned the different economic aspects like Jewelry Arabia, which is a platform for diversification when it comes to rare geological or even economic aspects. What can you tell us about the importance of Bahrain from its regional place to be a platform for all of these issues for the world and the Arab world in particular, but generally the whole globe?
Well, I mean, here you have to go back also to Bahrain's history as a hub and as an important stopping point. You know, historically, that was when we talk about antiquity. We talk about Bahrain being somewhere that was on trade routes because of its strategic location and because of its aquifers. And then recently, as recently as the 70s, Bahrain invested heavily in civil aviation and became a bridging point for many different regions in the world. Yeah. And so Bahrain has always been somewhere that is, in terms of transport, connected with the region, and that makes it very well situated to host international summits, to host international organizations like IOFI we have for the Islamic finance.
Yes.
And then add to that this longevity, this long-lasting, connectedness, has created an indigenous culture which is welcoming, and is characterized by high levels of hospitality. And what that means is that people like to come to Bahrain, and if Bahrain is hosting and something as important as an Arab League summit, or as potentially trivial as a sporting event, or people like to come, and that allows Bahrain, and that reflects Bahrain's character, and what we're seeing unfolding on the cameras in front of us today is very much a continuation of that characteristic.
Right. The Kingdom of Bahrain, another very important aspect is the fact that the identity of the Kingdom of Bahrain is that of peace, coexistence, tolerance, and really being a safe haven for anyone and everyone to be a part of. The Kingdom of Bahrain has also made so many strides when it comes to verifying its human rights, verifying its coexistence and tolerance rules and legislations. How important is it to have that kind of atmosphere in order to solve problems sustainably for the future?
Yeah, going back to this issue of hosting summits, Bahrain in 2021, Derasat, we hosted the Asia's first, we were the first country, in Middle East and entirety of Africa to host the global summit for think tanks.
Yes.
And you can consider that the sort of a younger brother of the United Nations General Assembly, but on the think tank circuit. And one of the, and we had people participating from the entirety of the Arab world, as far afield as Morocco, Tunisia, Yemen, and so on. But we also had people coming from Australia, coming from the US, from Canada. And, this was during just when Omicron, if you cast your back mind to COVID, the Omicron pandemic or the mutation variant was unfolding. And how is it that we were able to convince someone to fly from Canada to Bahrain, someone to fly from Australia or Japan to Bahrain? And at the heart of that is Bahrain's hard-earned reputation over many centuries as somewhere that is, encourages peaceful coexistence, that is emphasizes tolerance. Where it's a small country, and so when somebody from Australia or New Zealand is considering attending a global event, it's natural for them to be anxious about somewhere they've never been to, especially when it's during a pandemic. But the reality is that if anyone who's a prospective visitor speaks to people who have visited or reads about Bahrain, very quickly they'll arrive at the conclusion that this is somewhere that opens its arms to visitors from near and far, and will make them feel at home, and will enrich their travels.
Absolutely. During the past few days, we saw a lot of the delegations and meetings that have been happening on the sidelines of the summit which will be starting now. And these were basically targeting different issues in different fields: the economic field, food security, climate change, all different topics that are important to the world, to the Arab world in a whole, and where expertise are important. The Kingdom of Bahrain itself has a lot of expertise when it comes to the education field, the research field, climate change, and also sustainable solutions for different topics. What can you tell us about these meetings, and how will they influence the potential outcomes of the summit, the General Summit?
Yeah, I mean, everything, we live in a connected world. We live in a globalized world. You know, this table, these TV cameras, they were not made in Bahrain. In many cases, things we consume and use in Bahrain were made in other Arab countries. And sometimes we find that other Arabs come to Bahrain and contribute to our economy as, you know, residents of Bahrain. So what that means is that, and by the way, as a result of all of this, we have a much higher standard of living than we would if we tried to go it alone and just make things at Bahrain and rely 100% on.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, as a result of this, because we have this ambition to live much more prosperous lives by taking advantage of these connections and these opportunities to exchange, what it means is that, you know, our destiny is intertwined with those of the countries and these other partners.
Yeah.
It's nice to think maybe in some parallel universe that we are 100% masters of our domain, but the reality is that in a globalized world, whether you are USA or China, or whether you're a small Pacific island, your fate is intertwined with that of other countries in the world. And so what happens is that, you know, creates an impetus to be constantly engaging in dialogue with your partners, with your friends, and even with the countries that maybe your relations are not exactly where you want them to be.
Yeah.
And the Arab League Summit provides, you know, a forum, an avenue for that. And so what we see is, you know, with all these elite personnel, you know, congregating in one place, it makes absolute sense to have a variety of, you know, supporting meetings that allow the discussion of these issues, whether they're economic, social, cultural. I mean, you mentioned food security. Food security is an issue today that maybe wasn't an issue 15 or 20 years ago.
True.
Because we're, you know, we're experiencing climate change, we're experiencing water scarcity in the region that we didn't experience before. And so, you know, you can't solve these issues if you try to just do it with your own people sitting around a table. You need to speak to your partners, you need to speak to your neighbors. So thankfully, you know, by hosting the summit, Bahrain puts itself in the driver's seat in terms of ensuring that its interests are taken into account, and that it has the ability to, you know, set the agenda on these, you know, selection of very important issues.
Right. How important is it to be transparent about these issues when it comes to the cooperations between these countries and how they are trying to help each other augment their economies, augment their purposes for their citizens?
Well, you know, our ministries are very important parts of our government and of our society. But, you know, at the end of the day, each ministry is just just represents an important element of a sector, but doesn't represent the whole sector itself. So when, for example, the Ministry of Tourism signs a memorandum of understanding with their counterparts in other countries, it's important for everybody in the tourism sector to be aware of this, so that everybody can then take advantage of the opportunities that this provides. So, you know, our minister leads the way, opens the door, uses her influence and her position to provide opportunities for Bahrainis. But then it is up to our hotels, our restaurants, our travel agencies, our airlines, and so on, to seize these opportunities that are offered. And so there, the transparency is critical as an enabler of the cooperation, and as a signal to Bahrainis and to businesses that these opportunities exist. Seize them.
Yes, exactly. One of the main points or things that Derasat actually does is it plays a pivotal role in using research in order to pinpoint research and dialogue in order to pinpoint and understand current and emerging Arab issues, not just not just within the GCC area. What can you tell us about the importance of furthering that kind of research and actually having follow-ups on the outcomes of these researches?
Yeah, I mean, for a group of researchers and for an organization like Derasat, Arab League Summit is this something we live for. This is a culmination. This is a great honor for Bahrain and a great honor for Derasat to be in the country where this is being hosted, and it offers us a great opportunity to, first of all, to meet our colleagues who work in other countries who are coming to the event, to organize enriching side gatherings, to host our counterparts, and then also, in addition to all of that, to watching the events unfold,
yes,
and analyze them in real time. And as it happens, you switch on the news, whether it's Bahrain TV or otherwise, and every day we're getting updates on what's going on, and that's leading to further dialogue in the Arab League, whether it's in the main sessions or in the side sessions. And that's all something that we at Derasat are analyzing in real time, opining on in real time, and deepening our knowledge of. And really, it's for us probably. For us that are on the wrong side of 40, this is the only time we'll have the honor of being in the country that's hosting the Arab League Summit. But we consider ourselves very fortunate to be living through it, and hopefully our younger colleagues will maybe live to see the next Bahraini Arab League Summit.
In a public statement, or in a published statement, you have affirmed the necessity of engaging youth in economic issues. And also, we've seen how the Kingdom of Bahrain approaches teaching and promoting the idea of sustainability in the minds of youth through different programs, whether it's His Royal Highness the Crown Prince's leadership program, whether it is the Parliamentary Youth Program, or even programs that Derasat itself issues. So, from your point of view, if implemented, what is expected what are the expected outcomes of having the youth part of such a thing as the Arab Summit and seeing it unfold?
Well, the Arab custom, if we go back to hundreds of years ago, we have a strong deference in our culture to the elder members of our society, and sometimes that deference can lead us into maybe not engaging our youth as much as we should. But in Bahrain, as reflected in, for example, the existence of a Ministry of Youth and a Supreme Council for Youth Affairs, and as reflected in His Majesty's frequent allusions to the importance of youth, we have a cognizance, a national cognizance of the positive role that youth can play in society, whether it's something that is in terms of in this cultural and educational realm, or even in the economic realm, when we see now many young Bahrainis starting businesses, using social media in ways that I can only dream of using to make livings for themselves and to even employ other people. So at the heart of that is a belief that youth are not just people who are waiting their turn. No, they are people who are active contributors and who are meritorious possessors of a seat at the table. And at Derasat, we are always happy to work with young people inside our organization and outside. We organize many events which bring together society's younger elements, and both currently and in the past, and that stems from a conviction that Bahrain's youth is full of ideas and full of with a lot of potential to make positive contributions, and we see our role as being an enabler of that.
Right. The Kingdom of Bahrain is a part of a bigger entity when it comes to the GCC states and then the Arab region and then the whole globe. His Majesty the King has a vision, and in his vision, or one part of the vision, is his focus on the future generations by talking to consultants, to researchers and everything, and then coming out with certain points that we focus on. His Majesty the King focuses a lot on technology, on AI, on involvement, on coexistence, and all of these things. From the point of view of having a future in AI and technology, how important are legislations in order to pave the path for the future generations to stay focused on the goal at the end?
Yeah, well, so first of all, I mean, artificial intelligence, we're living a time of great transformation. When I was a child, artificial intelligence was something which was considered science fiction. But now in the last 2 years, since the version 3.5 of ChatGPT came out, now I've chosen version 4 online. We are seeing artificial intelligence do things that really, without exaggeration, were just in science fiction movies. Yesterday I saw the advert, I'm sure you saw it, for the latest version of ChatGPT, where someone who was blind was using ChatGPT to engage with the world in front of him. But the reality is that although AI provides many opportunities for us to enrich our lives, it also poses significant questions and bears some threats too. And managing those threats and enabling Bahrainis to get the benefits and minimize the risks requires stewardship. Sound stewardship requires putting the right legal framework. To give the simplest example, there's the issue of privacy. These AI algorithms require, they harvest data. When you ask them questions, they use those questions and your responses and those dialogues to answer other people. And so there needs to be a framework to ensure that, well, when I'm discussing things with my AI, that's not, and it's something personal, that's not something that anyone else can read, that can be used for, if I upload my memoirs and ask the ChatGPT to please correct it, copy edit for me. I don't want somebody else then reading my memoirs. So these things
makes them public.
To make them public. So these things require, and you can't trust the companies themselves, the people who develop these technologies, to self-regulate. Many of them have very good intentions, but their intentions are not enough. There needs to be oversight from people who legitimately represent the interests of the entirety of society. And that's why the data privacy frameworks that we have in Bahrain, the legislation relating to information sharing, relating to how software algorithms work, is important to allowing us to enjoy our AI and not fear its risks.
Right. I want to go back to the point that you mentioned about Derasat hosting the first
global summit,
local think tank.
Yeah, think tank summit. Yes.
What can you tell us about the importance of that, as well as exerted efforts in regard of the region's think tanks, knowing, as you have mentioned before, that the issues that we do face are somewhat similar, except for the difference in geography or maybe small differences when it comes to the people themselves?
Yeah, so think tanks, in any sort of sophisticated policy ecosystem, there's a place in that ecosystem for think tanks. And what think tanks do is they allow, first of all, policymakers who are drowning in the work, in their day-to-day work, in the difficult decisions they need to make on a daily basis. It allows them to dedicate themselves to day-to-day operations and to outsource some of that high-level thinking or some of that deeper reading to people who who possess the necessary skills, right. And then to translate that into something which can be used by policymakers. So at Derasat, like all think tanks in the Gulf and in the Arab world, we study things that we think are important, sometimes at our initiative, sometimes subject to a direction from the Prime Minister's office or from some government entity. And then we study, we analyze, we digest, and then we produce. We will summarize hundreds and hundreds of pages of scholarship into maybe something as short as half a page. Mm-hmm. And that enables policymakers to have a more rounded source material, have more rounded source material when they make the decisions that ultimately they're paid to do. Now, in the context of the Arab world and cooperation, mm-hmm. Going back to what we were discussing in the beginning, Bahrain's issues are not Bahrain's issues exclusively. UAE's issues are not exclusive UAE's issues. These interlinkages mean that we need to, at the national level, engage in dialogue, and then at the think tank level too. Yeah. We have Derasat wonderful relationships with many think tanks in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, in Kuwait, and many other Arab countries, and we're very proud of those relationships. But we also value them professionally because they allow us to conduct much better analysis, and we have a lot of joint projects with our friends and colleagues, from across the causeway, and working with our friends and colleagues means that we are able to support our government in a more effective way, and to play a more robust role in this diverse policy ecosystem.
Right. Also, Derasat is committed to actually building shared visions, and does that through establishing mutual beneficial partnerships with like-minded organizations, as you've mentioned, on the local level, but also on the international level. What can you tell us about those relationships and how they support each other when it comes to our relationship as in Derasat and Bahrain with international organizations, and how does that mirror onto the relationship with the Arab countries and their
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we hold many events, and although in any event we do, almost inevitably the largest percentage of people attending are Bahrainis or people residing in Bahrain. We make a strong effort to bring in our friends and colleagues from the rest of the region, whether they're from the Gulf or from the broader Arab world. And the reason for that is, as I say, we work with them. We want to understand their view. We want to convey to them our view. We want to give them the opportunity to talk to Bahrainis, to understand Bahraini stakeholders. And then when we go and participate in their events, we are able to gain really valuable insights from speaking to our counterparts in these other countries and speaking to ordinary citizens, ordinary businesses. So we absorb all of that material. We work to filter it and transform it into something which really everyone from an ordinary Bahraini citizen to the highest senior official can use to their benefit in their daily lives.
One of the important factors to mention here is that the Kingdom of Bahrain over the years has not only solidified its economic standing when it comes with the rest of the world, but it really has made or become a hub for businesses. It has become a financial hub, fintech, everything is a part of the Bahraini public. How is that a positive thing when it comes to the promotion of Arab joint action and being a part of each other's economy and supporting each other's economy?
Well, as we mentioned at the start, Bahrain is its status as a center is something which is part of its history. It's part of our national identity. It's not something that is an artifact of the last 20 or 30 years. And the Arab League Summit provides us with a platform to continue that, and we have a high degree of credibility. If you take the issue of financial sector is something that is very important to Bahrain. You mentioned we have Bahrain FinTech Bay.
Yes.
We also have the AOFI Institute for Regulating Islamic Finance, and when you have these kind of entities, that gives you weight, that gives you that gives you credibility when you discuss economic integration, whether it's in the financial domain or otherwise, and also it allows us as Bahrainis to feel proud, to feel that we are able to punch above our weight in these regional regional dossiers. And at Derasat, we play our part by conducting research on the importance of this economic integration, by diagnosing some of the difficulties and the challenges that have emerged in the last 20 years, and by proposing potentially fruitful avenues for resolving these difficulties. So really, it's a holistic circle of success and knowledge, and we're very proud to be part of that.
Yes, we are. Also, one factor that we want to talk about before we end our discussion is how does United Arab Front after the summit, with applying a united set of outcomes and actually following up on them, following through with them, how will that represent in front of the whole globe, especially with the challenges that we are facing and that are being discussed?
Well, unfortunately, in many regions of the world, we're seeing a disintegration of political unity. We're seeing a political disintegration, we're seeing a social disintegration, and there are many reasons for that, but the result is greater conflict, more wars. And so in the Arab League, this is our opportunity to seize the moment, to show, okay, well, the rest of the world is facing great political and social challenges. The Arab world will respond to those political and social challenges by increasing cooperation, increasing coordination. And so really it's very much an exercise in building confidence, in building bridges, and in putting the groundwork for Bahrain to be a prosperous and active contributor to these improvements.
Right. Also, when we come and look at all of the delegations that are a part of the discussions over the past few days and now taking part of at the summit itself, we see that there are a variety of experts from each single field of a whole government: education, economy, research. We're talking about the ministers of health. We're talking about a lot of fields. Why is that an important factor?
We're no longer living in a world where these issues are separate. These issues are all integrated. We both lived through the COVID pandemic.
Yes.
Would you describe the COVID pandemic as a purely health crisis? No. It was a crisis, of course, health-wise, but it was also an economic crisis. It was a social crisis. It was a mental health crisis. It was a security crisis. So, you need to have these important decision makers in the room discussing these things across domains, across sectors. You can't hope to deal with an issue like food security by just assigning the task to a small group of people. Food security requires logistics, it requires research, it requires legal framework, it requires physical infrastructure. So all these things need to be discussed, and bringing all these important decision makers together from these sectors is an important step in getting to where you need to be.
Right. Before we end our discussion now again, we do want to talk about the importance of shedding the light, the media, what the media has, the media's role in covering this event and bringing it over to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, the highest concentration of media personnel covering the event is Bahrainis. And it is incumbent upon us as Bahrainis and is incumbent upon our media sector to convey to the world, first of all, Bahrain's convening power, and to convey to the world Bahrain's seriousness and earnestness in confronting regional challenges and in being an active contributor to resolving these difficult conflicts. When foreign media agencies come, they're going to cover the issues from the perspective of their own stakeholders. Yeah. But really the most important stakeholder or most important media when it comes to putting the right narrative out is the Bahraini one. So really the task before Bahrain's media during these 3-4 days is to capture, first of all, the excitement and the pride that we feel as Bahraini citizens at hosting this event, and secondly, to show to the rest of the world that Bahrain is able to bring these important people to one place and to be the conduit for solutions to these difficult problems.
Right. Also, when we look at the media coverage and the entities that are here to cover the Arab Summit, it's also very important to have a unified message coming out, not having any biases, and really talking transparently about the issues that are being targeted themselves. We've seen over the past months, with the different challenges that are facing, different media outlets reporting different things, saying different things, having biases to different areas or to different sides. The importance right now is to be unbiased and to talk about it freely and openly. Why, from your point of view, will that affect the actual outcomes at the end?
Well, we live in a social media age, and with social media, what we have is a situation where people with very negative agendas can have significant influence on the media landscape. Sometimes those negative agendas can be as simple as wanting to make as much money as possible by putting ridiculous things out that make people clickbait, if you will. I've seen some absolutely ridiculous conspiracy theories out, but there's money to be made, unfortunately, if you can put something ridiculous out, because people will click. So in a world where with noisy media, the importance of having an entity or a group of people putting out a consistent, objective view of what's going on is enhanced. And that's the responsibility of our local media in Bahrain, whether it's the newspapers, whether it's the Ministry of Information, whether it's the individual influencers. It's to present the truth, present the reality, and the reality is that we are fortunate as Bahrain to be bestowed this honor, but this is an honor which we are very proud to receive as well, and it reflects our a belief in the importance of multilateralism and in the importance of collaboration for confronting the region's challenges.
The reality of the Arab nations is vital for the future that is coming up. One of the things affecting that is climate change. One of the things affecting that is the unsustainability of a lot of the things that are on the ground right now, and changing it into sustainable solutions. The Kingdom of Bahrain dedicated a whole ministry that just deals with the sustainable development of different issues. How important is the agenda topic of sustainability and sustainable solutions for different things?
In 2015, the United Nations launched the sustainability agenda, following the conclusion of the Millennium Development Goals, and this is a consensual. This was done by consensus among the over 180 member states of the United Nations, and that reflects a belief among all peoples in the world that we need to change the way we live, and we need to think of, first of all, ensuring that we take care of the planet for our future, for our children. You mentioned the youth; they're the ones who are going to inherit, the planet Earth from the current, generation of older people, of adults. So, ever since 2015, whenever there's been a global gathering, the centerpiece or a key issue. Discussion point is sustainability, and that's reflected in all the work we do at Derasat, and that's reflected in the agendas being put out by the Arab League. And even if you take the issue of Gaza, nominally that doesn't look like it's something related to sustainability, but it is absolutely something that is intrinsically related to sustainability, because it's a recognition that what is happening in Gaza at the moment is not something that is conducive to social cohesion, to even environmental sustainability. And so if you look at every session and every meeting that is being held either on the summit or on the sidelines of the summit, they're all focusing on how we can live more prosperous lives, and ones that won't just be prosperous today and tomorrow, but will be prosperous 15, 20, 50 years from now too.
Absolutely. Also, another aspect on the agenda is food security, water security and availability, which is directly or indirectly affected by climate change and by not having a sustainable solution for preservation of these things. So what can you tell me about where you think it's going to go on the agenda when talking about security of food, water security and resource?
Yeah, I think that water security is one of the most important issues that Arab countries are facing at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of important water resources that are shared in ownership and control, or that where one country is downstream of another. And we don't live in the 18th century anymore, where a country that is dissatisfied with the behavior of its neighbor just sort of invades it and has its way.
Yeah.
We live in a world where there is international law, where there is respect for sovereignty, and where countries are expected to deal with international problems in a civilized and constructive manner. And so these water problems cannot be resolved by the barrel of a gun. They have to be resolved by dialogue, by collaboration. And so I expect, although I don't have the detailed minutes of these meetings, but I expect that, as you intimated, water security is going to be one of the main issues that is being discussed in the summit. Mm-hmm. And really many of the conflicts that we're seeing unfold, continuing today in the region and outside the region, ultimately relate to some sort of water conflict.
Yes.
And this goes back to some of the sort of more pessimistic predictions that we witnessed in the 90s from various hydrologists and political scientists who anticipated the day when conflict over how to manage water resources would transform from two farmers shouting at each other to something far more serious.
Yes.
So as I say, the Arab Summit provides the forum, it provides the framework. And really, I'm excited to hear what the member states are able to achieve using this platform.
We also want to talk a little bit about how Derasat over the years
Yes.
has really prepared research and topics that are now vital to be discussed in order to have a sustainable future.
So I mean, if you look at our most recent publications,
Mm-hmm.
many relate to the issues being discussed today.
Yes.
For example, last year we published a book on, my colleague Dr. Ashraf Kisht published a book on maritime security in the Arabian Gulf. This is very much a hot topic and continues to be so. We've done a lot of work on food security. We've done a lot of work on renewable energy. We've done a lot of work on environmental degradation in the region. All my colleagues in the research department have been very active in this front. My colleague Dr. Abdullah Al-Abbasi, the director of Energy and Environment Program, him and his colleagues have been doing a lot of work on how to make Bahrain and the Arab world consume its natural resources more sustainably, and how to produce energy in a cleaner way, in a way that is more conducive to protecting the environment. With all of this research, we are very proud at Derasat to be active players in diagnosing problems in the region and to proposing constructive solutions.
Yes, actually, because we've been asked this question repeatedly, and you are with us today, when it comes to the economic diversification and promotion throughout the whole Arab world, and having done a lot of studies and research when it comes to the availability and
Yes.
ability to use natural resources or talents or cadres, how important is the cooperation again between Arab nations in order to further economy, further everything? But right now we want to talk about the economy itself.
Yeah, I mean, diversification really, a central element of successful economic diversification is having access to a large market. If you're China or the US, that large market is domestic, it's big enough. But if you're more or less every other country in the world, then the only way you're going to have a market large enough to have true diversification is by opening your economy to other economies and having their economies open to yours.
Yeah.
In the case of the European Union, they have a single market. In the case of South America, they have the Mercosur single market, and or trade area. And in Asia, you have ASEAN. And for the case of Bahrain, we have access to the GCC, single market, which is a central plank of our strategy for economic diversification. And what we hope is that the Arab League Summit will continue to work, continue to strive to deliver the holy grail of a common market for the entire Arab world, because really it's difficult to describe to you, to convey to you exactly how much economic potential there is in the Arab world.
Yes.
And getting that integration and getting that common market is something that would be a major step. What we're seeing, working towards it, is gradual integration of the electricity grids, with great benefits now. We're about to see the completion of the connection between the GCC grid and Iraq. And then hopefully we'll have that grid connected to Jordan, to Egypt, and then really the benefits in terms of lower electricity prices, more sustainable energy consumption are something that can really enrich our lives.
Sky's the limit at that point.
Sky's the limit, absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely. Also, looking at the pandemic and how the reaction of different countries were, the Kingdom of Bahrain actually set the bar high when it came to the humanitarian treatment of residents of the Kingdom of Bahrain from any country. Whether it is people that had COVID or providing the vaccinations and healthcare. Also, the really fast switch from physical attendance to online attendance, having that platform, that technological grid and platform that is already available, and education that was there for the cadres on that switch now you go online, now you do this. How prepared were we for COVID, and do you think we have to be prepared, and that's something to be taught even at a summit like this, the preparation for things to come?
Yeah, so I mean, at Derasat we were very fortunate to work with the United Nations Development Program in Bahrain. During the pandemic, we received financial support from United Nations Development Program in New York to conduct a socio-economic impact analysis of COVID in real time. And as part of that, research, we produced dozens of briefs and papers looking at different aspects of the impact of the pandemic on daily life in Bahrain. And as a result of that process of studying the impact, it became very clear to us just how sophisticated some of the steps that were taken by our colleagues in the Prime Minister's office and in different ministries, how sophisticated steps they took to prepare and to manage the crisis. And today, I can say with authority as a Bahraini that Bahrain, really distinguished itself in confronting the pandemic, especially on the health domain, starting with exceptional preparation through to excellent management and really top quality research being done throughout the process, backwards looking research, forwards looking research, and this is something that could really hang our hat on. And our Minister of Health, Her Excellency Dr. Jalila Sayed, she published her and her colleagues published a paper in the top medical journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA, on Bahrain's vaccine experience. How many countries can say that their Minister of Health is publishing articles, papers in top biomedical journals? I would say that Bahrain. This is just one manifestation of how distinguished Bahrain's management of the crisis was, and how proud we can be as Bahrainis of how we dealt with the crisis.
Right. Even applying this kind of solutions to other countries. We had the Be Aware app. We had that public information access, and also the continuous awareness that was given, whether from health professionals, whether it was from research institutions, to people about how to deal with these kind of things. And health issues are one topic, but they're not the only devastating topic that is available or that is on our in our region. So we look at those as well and hope that from them we can also find more solutions.
Absolutely.
the Bahrain summit is presided over by His Majesty the King,
yes,
who has a vision not just for his country, but really for how the whole Arab world will be looking in the future.
Yeah.
So that presidency, what are from your point of view, the outcomes that are expected from the Bahrain side, from the Bahrain delegation, that we are hoping for?
Well, I think what we're hoping to see is, first of all, a continuation of the unified Arab stance on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Yes, as you've mentioned.
And that, and it is at the heart of that is the insistence by His Majesty King Hamad and all other heads of state in the region that the Palestinian people a Palestinian state be established, and that they have the ability to exercise their rights in the international community as a sovereign, independent state. So what we're hoping to see is a continuation of that affirmation and a reinforcement of it. And beyond that, I expect there to be continued discussion of the environmental challenges and the food security challenges, and probably the putting together of more advanced frameworks for tackling these issues.
Right. Dr. Omar, as always, having you and discussing with you on these topics is a never-ending joy, especially that the way you always put it into context for people that are watching us. We are starting the summit today, and we're really looking tomorrow, and we're really looking to the potential of the success of all of the topics on the agenda itself. Is there anything that you would like to say here at the end now before we go to our live coverage?
I think that what I would like to say is that is to affirm the sentiments that existed in 1945 when the Arab League was established, which is that the Arab identity is something which is true, which exists. It is something that is affirmed in the Noble Quran, and it is something that we should always hold on to. And being aware and cognizant and proud of our Arab identity does not make us people who ignore or who create conflict with the rest of the world. But it's we need, every human being inside and outside Bahrain needs to have an answer to the question of who we are. And at the heart of that is that we are Arabs, and this is something that we are proud of.
Thank you very much, Dr. Omar Al-Ubaydli, for being with us.